That sounds fun. That sounds fun.
Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of That Sounds Fun, The Seasons. We are so happy it is spring. I'm your host, Annie F. Downs. I'm very happy to be here with you. Today on the show, we're answering the question, how do I transition seasons? This is an important one. But before we dive in, I want to tell you about one of our incredible sponsors. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Today, as we talk about transitioning seasons, it may bring up some moments of times or memories of when that has happened for you, or maybe it's happening right now. It's so normal to need some extra support to navigate when you are changing seasons. It's hard. And this is where counseling is a huge help. I can't tell you how helpful my counselor has been in those kinds of seasons, whether I'm processing changes in my personal life or work life or both. And it's an investment too. The cost adds up quickly, but an incredible option is BetterHelp. With BetterHelp's online therapy, you can save on average up to 50% per session. You pay a flat fee for weekly sessions, saving you big on costs and time. With online therapy, you can get quality care at a price that makes sense and can help you with anything from anxiety to everyday stress, like stepping into a new season. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/thatsoundsfun today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/thatsoundsfun. Today on the show, Pastor Levi Lusko is back. Spring is here, and with the changing of seasons can come all sorts of transitions, whether it's physically happening around us or in our hearts, our work, or in our relationships. Levi is such a wise voice in this and especially can speak to the realities of the big impact of it all with the release of his new book, Blessed Are the Spiraling, which comes out tomorrow. Listen, the minute he told me about this book, I said, will you please come help us change seasons? Like, I literally asked him to be on this exact episode. If you're following along and taking notes in your TSF Seasons Guidebook, we're on page 43. If you don't have a copy yet of a guidebook, but would like one, you can find that at anniefdowns.com/seasons. So now here is my conversation with my friend. You're going to love this one. It's Pastor Levi Lusko.
That sounds fun.
Okay, Levi, so it's your third episode. You know what happens at 5? You get in the Hall of Fun.
I am so excited. That and my free sandwich at Subway. I'm really excited about.
Do you know what's
Does
so
anybody
funny?
go to Subway still anymore?
Who? I don't know. I see it on I'm not on TikTok, but I see on the Reels sometimes. Apparently they have very long cookies now. Who knew?
They're trying so hard.
Do y'all
rebuild.
have-
They've had a really hard go of it.
Tell me about Subways in Montana. Are they there?
We have them, and Lennox is strangely obsessed with them. I think he likes the process of watching. I'm like, have you heard of Jimmy John's? We can do anything but Subway.
Yeah. And he just wants to see the whole thing.
And they're hanging on with the breakfast. God bless their hearts. Nobody wants to go to Subway for breakfast.
No, not if you can help it. There are some of our friends listening who are like, I can't help it. It's the only stop between my house and work. But you talk about this in the book, but I love your family so much. Will you talk about Lennox's laugh?
Oh man.
Oh, my
His laugh.
gosh.
You've heard it, Annie. He has this pure, first of all, God blessed us in the sense that he is the only of our kids who has his sister Linya's voice, this raspy, sounds like he's had half a pack of
Really?
cigarettes kind of a voice,
Yeah.
which you have a lovely rasp in your voice
Thank
as
you,
well.
I do, yeah.
No, but
A lot of
the
talking.
best voices do. The best singers have a good rasp, the best podcasters. I think there's a little bit of a smoky character to it.
Uh-huh.
And that's Lennox. And so when he laughs, it heals our hearts. We didn't even know that was what we needed. God gave us this beautiful boy's laughter, like Isaac, that healed parts of our hearts that
Yes.
we were still, hanging on to some grief and some residue. And our mutual friend, Lisa Harper, had told us that she felt like the Lord was gracious enough to give that laugh to our home to help us heal. And it's been so true.
I sat with some friends a couple of days ago. We were all laughing so hard we were talking about Severance, and we were all laughing at our thoughts on the show and kind of like people, just the wild things. And I had one of those moments that when I was reading Blessed Are the Spiraling is what made me think of Lennox's laugh of we were all laughing and I kind of left my body for a second and watched us, you know what I mean? And I was like, why did God give us this? Why did God give us laughter? What a strange, beautiful, fun, wonderful thing.
Oh, true. And such a silly thing. No one looks good laughing,
No.
And you understand why some cultures, like when I was in Korea, they always cover their mouth when they laugh, you know?
Oh, interesting.
And whenever I laugh, I'm like, yeah, I probably should cover
Yeah.
my mouth, you know?
It's
It's
like
a
such
vulnerable
gift.
thing. You're
It's
showing
such
your
a
teeth.
gift.
You're showing your soul. Yeah.
Yes. So we're going to go into this podcast laughing. Our friends listening we are all very excited to be into spring. We have done our time in winter for the first quarter of the podcast year. And you're kind of answering the question for us, how do I transition seasons? Your new book, Blessed Are the Spiraling, that comes out tomorrow is literally about transitioning seasons. So I was like, Levi, please come on. Will you back up and talk about why you wrote this? You weren't even writing with a book deal. You were just writing to heal.
Yeah, I went to the top of a mountain I knew I needed to unpack some of the lessons that when I started writing it that had been the last 2 years. And I had closed out a really hard chapter.
Yeah.
20 and 2021 and 2022. That whole series, 38 through 40 for me, was so hard. It was a wilderness time. And I felt I had emerged from it enough to where I got permission from the Lord to start to bottle up some of the truth, right? I mean, I've heard it said you should heal your wounds, but share your scars.
Yeah, beautiful.
So you don't want somebody, trying to put lessons behind a really oozing, festering wound. You need some triage. You need maybe some Neosporin. Let's get surgery if we need it. But then when they're healed enough to be like Jesus, helpful to show and to share. And I felt I was at that tipping point of like, okay, there's enough closure and clarity. I'm not fully healed, but I'm healed enough to where I could help someone else who's more oozing than me. And so I went up on the top of a mountain to my favorite table on the Summit House, and I had a notebook, and I was trying to pray through it all. And what emerged was the outline for what we're talking about, Blessed Are the Spiraling, where it was basically, I didn't know it at the time, but I was having a classic midlife crisis because I was transitioning from being the young pastor to not being the young pastor, which I'm not old yet, but I'm not young.
We're not the young pastors anymore. Yeah, that's right.
No, exactly. And so me grappling with that, as well as a lot of other, work I needed to still do, was what ended up in this book, a book about transitioning, a book about how to embrace a season, how to know your current and your next season, and basically the beauty inherent in that.
Yeah. There's an actual house at the top of the mountain where people can sit inside.
Oh, yeah. It's called the Summit House. You can, of course, buy chili or have, shots of whiskey on a ski.
A shot ski?
Well, there's a ski, and there's like 7 shot glasses attached to it, and then everyone lifts it up. And
totally, a shot ski.
Okay.
I love it.
So they have those. Everyone cheers triumphantly, jubilantly.
Wow. So that's just at the top. Okay, next time can we go to the top of the mountain next time?
Do you ski?
No, but can't I go in the summer or something?
Oh, yeah. Well, you could buy an up and downhill ski pass, like a chairlift that will get you up and down.
Yeah.
But the best way to do it is to climb up there yourself on your own 2 feet.
Yeah. I'm very happy to hike up there.
Well, let's
Levi,
do it.
You don't want to take me skiing. I don't like, let me tell you something. Let me give you the facts. I don't like going fast in my body. Like, I don't mind if I'm in a car. I don't like when my body goes fast. I don't like being on bikes. I don't like when my body goes fast. The only time I've skied, I ripped my MCL and I was very sore. And I thought, I think this skill is not going to be involved in my life.
Yeah, no, well, that I accept that. I will say, looking out that window in the winter time when the trees are covered in snow and everything's happening, that's like one of my favorite places to write talks or reflect and journal.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I just kind of
ride up and then write and ski down,
or I ski up. I put these skins. There's this thing called uphill skiing or snowboarding in my case, where you put skins under the bottom of your skis or your split board.
Uphill snowboard.
Yeah, you just very slowly. The skins are like a cat's tongue where they move, they glide across the snow this way, but then back they stop, friction. And so, yeah, you go up, I have a little backpack, you burn about 1,000 calories in an hour. I do it in the dark with a headlamp.
Yeah,
and
you
then
do it in the
have
morning,
time
right?
At the top, yep, and then ski down.
Okay, see, I can get behind snowboarding up a hill. I think I would really I like the temperature and I like the snowboard feel. Can I snowboard up and ride down on the...
You would be one of one in your own club because most people do it to get first tracks on the powder before the chairlift starts spinning.
Oh,
so
okay.
But you could time it just right to where you get to the top and have your time at the Summit House and then get on the chairlift and nobody would understand it, but we would all applaud you for leaving the good snow to us.
Yeah. Oh, Please do not let me have good snow. What an absolute waste for an Annie F. Don't let me have the good snow. Okay, some else. I think it's important because the reason I asked you about it is as we're talking today, I really want people to use our conversation today to help us think about transitioning seasons. And a lot of times you need a place. Like you need a place that, in fact, in the book, you talk about building altars, like how important it is to have sturdy places when it feels like everything else is spiraling. Will you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, think about how many times Jacob returned to Bethel.
Yeah.
Think about how
interesting.
Samuel would call the nation to Gilgal. They would go there to renew the kingdom. You know, God is a God of place. I mean, he's given us a place for our souls to sit in our bodies. You don't like that your body goes fast, which is amazing, you know, but really so oftentimes our bodies are going so fast, our souls have a hard time keeping up. You know, I think we get spiritual jet lag too, just
Wow.
moving so quickly from thing to thing. And we're all of a sudden we're in our phones and we're being transported across the world. And
Right.
we need to give I think the Sabbath is partially there so our souls can catch up with
Wow.
everything we've been doing and running, right?
Yep.
So places that anchor us strategically, altars, as it were, the tabernacle, the temple, our own gatherings in the church. But then I think spiritually, personally, there are profound places to come back to. You know, I think the visit to your childhood home.
Yeah.
I think some of these places, when I did my long intensive that kind of was at the beginning of the healing journey for me, I ended up of all places in Denver, Colorado, which is only an hour from where I grew up. So I was able to go return and, you know, go back and see all the things that I experienced that were so formative for me that I hadn't realized. Because part of the thing for me, Annie, was Linya died, and that's a big gaping wound. That's like a bullet hole, you know, or losing a child. And you're gonna focus on healing those wounds. You're gonna do the counseling. You're gonna brush your teeth. You're gonna do all the things because you know a wound like that can get gangrene and kill you. What I didn't realize that I took for granted was all of the nicks and bruises that were 1,000 paper cuts
Wow.
all throughout my life. I had collected all of those, and I hadn't processed and healed so many of them because I didn't give respect to any one of them because they all seemed so insignificant individually. Here's the craziest thing: until at the age of 40, I was looking back into my childhood because I was annoyed by the cliche of it all.
Yeah.
I would have told you my parents' divorce had no effect on me.
Oh, wow.
And I would have probably passed a polygraph test saying that.
Yeah. Like you really believed it.
I was like, you know, what am I going to sit on a couch and talk about my mom? You know what I mean? Like it was
Right.
just to me so, you know, cliche. And even I think that was the hard thing for me to even accept that I was in a season of transition or a season of midlife crisis because, you know, I saw the guy with the Corvette and the gold chain and too many buttons undone in his thing. And I'm going to go have an affair. It's like, what? Be creative with your mistakes. You know what I mean? But then I was like,
Right. We've
oh,
all seen
darn
that
it.
movie. Now, if anybody does it, you're like, boring.
And then I was like, oh no, I am in a midlife crisis and I do
Wow.
have unprocessed childhood trauma. Darn it.
Yeah. I'm thinking too, like I have this one chair in my house in Nashville it's this swirly pattern that I bought in 6, and it looks like it. But it feels that is where I sit every time I'm reading my Bible and every time I'm praying. So can we even have altars? Like when I was reading that, I was thinking, I wonder if that's what Levi means too, that there's places we can go back to almost on a daily rhythmic basis when our seasons are shifting. At least I have my swirly chair.
Yeah, I think you said, I think I took too many rabbit trails down there. I agree without question. The repeated amounts of times Jacob would go back to Bethel as a place where he first put up the altar into a pillar, which literally it was, if you think about it, the pillow he had been sleeping on.
Wow.
Because when he ran from Esau, all he had was a pillow. He had
Yes.
nothing. And so that was the rock he had slept on that turned into a pillar. So I think that became, I guarantee you, every time he came back and saw that pillar,
Yeah.
it was like, there's my spot. There's my swirly
Yeah,
chair.
yeah.
For me, it's the back porch. I light the fire, the ritual. I light a match. I light the fire. I sit
Yeah.
down here. Now I'm meeting with God here in this place in my body. Now, of course, we get hotels and we end up at different spots.
Yes.
But I think we all should have personal altars.
Yeah. Why is we jumped right in of me asking you questions because we're transitioning seasons, and I'm in my personal life, I'm transitioning some seasons too. Why does it feel so unsettling? Why does it feel like spiraling? It happens all the time. And yet every time, Levi, I feel like I can't get my bearings because my life is changing seasons.
Because we really have this illusion of control
Yeah,
that
I
we have
do.
believed
I
and we have
do.
bought. And I'll tell you, the most staggering statistic to come across is the fact that 72% of Americans don't have a will.
Yes, I read that in the book. I could not believe that.
Okay, so think about this. There's nothing more certain than death. There's not one thing more
And that you
certain than
own
death.
stuff. These two things are certain.
And that the average American, their family will spend 300 hours dealing with their said stuff. That's the average. So for an estate to be eliminated, meaning every last little deal. Okay, we did the last Goodwill run, we did the last, whatever, 300 hours. And so we complicate it without an estate, because then stuff ends up in probate. Kids don't have assigned guardians. There's so much more complications to it all. You don't get to control where your assets flow to a large degree. And so Americans, that just tells me we want to pretend like we have control of our life. And so I think now multiply that over every season of life coming out of college. I mean, more people are even having quarter life crises than midlife crisis right now.
Wow.
So we're trying to hang on to when we were in college or when we were playing sports or when we were doing this. So I think we're really bad at navigating transitions because we want to speed up to whatever our idealized perfection is. And then we want to dig our heels in and say forever 21.
Yes.
Hang
That's
on.
the wild thing is we rush through college because we want to be grown-ups. And then as that season switches, you go, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to handle all this. And the same with winter to spring. In my brain, I've gone like, get me out of winter. And then spring gets here. I'm like, is it summer yet? Annie,
Right.
you just got to spring. Like, I don't understand me. I
We
don't
do.
understand how much
as
I do
parents,
this.
we rush our kids to. I want them to crawl. I want them to walk. I want them to go to school, and then we'll dig our heels in, and they'll graduate, and it's like, oh, I wish they were back. I wish they were here. So I just think we project happiness behind us and in front of us, and we forget that God is just with us right now, right here, and often where we don't want to be, because where we find ourselves is where we don't want to be. But God isn't where you wish you were, because that place doesn't exist. He's just where you are today. And that can transform everything, because, the royalty, wherever a royal king is or queen is, I got to see Prince William and Princess Kate once, and they were there was nowhere they needed to be, because where they are is the center of everything. So watching royalty be anywhere is the center of the universe. And I think if we could just remember that the king lives in us, we wouldn't need to try and be anywhere else. We could just be where we are, because the center of the universe is where the king is, and he's with us right now here where we are.
That is so good. How did you get to see William and Kate?
I was at the Tour de France in England. They do the Tour de France every year. It starts in a different country, sometimes called the Grand Depart. And so the bike racing tour was starting in England, and I got to watch the finish line of 2 stages, and they came in their helicopter at the last minute, right before the race started. We had been there for 5 hours. They arrived by helicopter right before it began. And you know what? They were not looking for things. They were is the center of the world.
That
they are aware
is
of it.
such a great analogy. Where they are is the center. Where royalty is the center.
They're not looking for a corn dog stand. You know what I mean? Like it's all been pre-planned. Like they're just happy where they are.
In the book, I'm just going to keep quoting you to yourself because it was so helpful to me in transitioning seasons. You said we change seasons one heartbeat at a time. And I think my inclination, Levi, you know this, you and Jenny know this about me. My inclination is to change seasons a week at a time. Like, let's knock it all out. And it's just way more about slow and here and slow and here, but I just don't want to do it. What's the pain of that? What's the pain of us going slow that I don't want?
Oh gosh. Yeah, you're speaking exactly my hate language when you talk about waiting, but it's heart throbs. It's like you said, it's heart throbs. We should measure life in the throbs of our heart. And when you think about what a miracle your heartbeat is. And so I think just sitting in that stillness, because we clamor like Alexander the Great, which is kind of like the launching off point to me in the book, was realizing Alexander the Great had conquered the entire world at 33.
Yes.
And he wept. He wept for the fact that there was no more world to conquer, right? But he also wept because in his drunken, impulsive rage, which he had grown more and more and more reckless in his, he collected all these battle wounds, and he was so much more valuable to the kingdom alive than dead, yet he would throw himself over the wall first. He ended up getting shot by arrows multiple times, all these infections, catapult damage to him. And then he would, drink to still feel alive and feel reckless. And in one of his drunken rages, he killed one of his best friends.
Yeah.
And he wept over the body of his best friend. And so you just see this picture. There's never anybody who's had more wealth and opulence. He was the Pharaoh of Egypt. Literally, they called him Pharaoh. He was the king of Macedon and Greece and ruler over all of the known world. Yeah. And yet weeping, right? Because he just wanted more. The next thing, I just need to keep going. And so I think to be able to sit in stillness and just go, hey, happiness and blessing is right where I am. It's not with more. It's not with purchases. It's not with accomplishments. There's always going to be that I need to do to be, but we're not human doings. We're human beings.
Right.
And to sit in that is hard. But what is it? The old quote, all of our miseries stem from our inability to sit quiet by ourselves.
Yeah, that's true, I think. Does that feel true to you?
It feels true to me only because the moment I sit down and light my candle that reminds me of God's presence, my mind races to think of 100 things because it doesn't want to just sit in stillness. I mean, what the percentage of people who go to sleep with the TV on every night? Something to block out the quiet.
I keep sticky notes by my swirly chair because I just have to, if I can get it out of my brain once I start, I just kind of do a brain dump and that will help me. But I'll tell you the other thing that helped me, Levi, is there was not a lot of advantages to COVID-19. One of the advantages for me as an unmarried person who lived alone is I was alone more than I had ever chosen to be alone as an adult. And there was real, growth in, can I appreciate my own company? Can I sit quietly with myself for extended time? I don't know that I'd have ever done that without being forced to do that for those months. And I do think that grew me in maturity.
Yeah. No, I think so. I mean, I think it's a reflection of your health to notice the colors of a flower, to notice the sound of trees rustling. And I think you have to sit still long enough for those things to begin to open up to you, and I think God has given us that gift of every bush is aflame with the glory of God. But when we're driving 65 miles an hour and flying 300 miles an hour and going at ballistic speeds, I mean, it's just, we all know the screens are warping us, and now it's all like, VR goggles and all the rest, to just sit and listen to the sound of leaves rustling and to sit with yourself. And, there's a reason that Memento Mori, or Remember You Are Mortal, used to be written at the top of documents and used to be the first words kings would hear in the morning, like just to contemplate the end. The Bible says you get this heart of wisdom when you contemplate the end and you are able to start making wiser decisions. And so part of the beauty of sitting in stillness is even just going, hey, look, there's going to be a day when I can't walk. I can't feed myself. There's going to be a day, we just had this sweet woman in our church go home to be with Jesus at the age of 80. And, at the end, she was so feeble, she couldn't do all those things. So I think every time we sit and cease, we think, okay, there's going to be a day when I can't rise to work. There's going to be a day where I can't do another episode of the podcast.
Yeah.
And I think it gives us a greater humility.
Oh, we're going to talk about humility. We're going to talk about George Custer. Everybody stick around. We got to talk about George Custer. I say this to you in real life, Levi, but I'll say this recorded. The way you research for a book and the way you bring in history is one of my favorite things about your writing. So we're going to talk about him.
That sounds fun.
Hey friends, just to interrupt in this conversation to tell you about one of our incredible partners, Thrive Cosmetics. Whenever I see people doing get ready with me videos on the internet, GRWMs, I always end up seeing them doing something with their makeup that I want to try too. Like the way so many of you do that like winged eyeliner. I wish. It is so cute. When I talk to you on Insta stories while I'm doing my makeup in the mornings, you always see me talk about Thrive Cosmetics Liquid Lash Extensions Mascara because I love it so much. It is forever my favorite. And I know I'm not the only one. It has over 40,000 five-star reviews. That is crazy. Give it a try. I think you're truly going to love it. There's 5 different shades to choose from. It lasts all day without clumping, smudging, or flaking. Y'all have asked me before if I got lash extensions, and nope. But just the liquid lash extensions mascara making my lashes look super long without the damaging glue or salon prices of extensions. And at the end of the day, it's really easy to take it off. It's the best. It slides right off with warm water and a washcloth. No soap required. You got to try your new trusty favorites with this exclusive set for our friends. Listen, new customers can get liquid lash extensions mascara and a mini-sized brilliant eye brightener at a special set price and free shipping. That's all available at thrivecosmetics.com/TSF. Or save more than 20% off your first order at thrivecosmetics.com/TSF. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/TSF for 20% off your first order. Okay, now back to this great conversation with Levi Lusko.
That sounds fun.
So this is in the Put Your Hands on What Is Yours chapter. You say, while you may be in summer now, winter is coming, and you'll wish you had gathered and prepared. I'm talking the winter of career, health, mobility, or vitality. You will not remain as physically beautiful, desirable, acknowledged, or sought after as you are right now. Clinging to these things instead of anticipating their inevitable moment of being required of us is to have your head hidden in the sand. And then you go on and kind of do, here's the wisdom of being present. Here's why it matters. We're in the middle of Lent, and I'm curious in my own life as I've made space and had to give up some things, this idea of you're not always going to be who you are has been really scary for me. It may be because I have more time right now, because I have more thinking right now. Are you at a place of peace about this? Is that what the spiraling helped do? Are you at a place of, there will come a time where a season changes and I will not go backwards?
Yes. Well, when I was writing those words, I was specifically sharing about the grappling I had done with how much of my identity came from being a speaker, being an author, being sought after, being whoever. And because so much, Annie, had crept in year 20 to year 40 that I didn't mean to, that attached itself like barnacles under a ship.
Yes.
You know, because I got saved so young, and I was so thankful to not be headed to hell, and I was so grateful to not be, looking to drugs and porn just to fill the hole in my heart. And I was just like, Jesus, thank you. And then he was like, hey, would you go? And I was like, I'll go. I'll tell whatever. So it was never about, what I would get to do for God. And then somewhere along the way, you do some things for God, and it's nice. And and I just, at the speed of life, didn't realize how much of how I saw me came from what I do.
Wow.
And not just Jesus and the treasure of the field, and I sold it all to get the treasure. And, when Jesus gives that parable, which is kind of the organizing metaphor of the book, the most important thing to me was that he starts that parable by saying, again, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who found a treasure, and for the joy of it sold everything he had. Again. And what I've realized in the revelation was that can't be a one-time transaction. You can't just go to the field once. You have to keep going back. And when you keep going back, you have to once again sell everything in your hands. So as it turns out, as a 25-year-old and as a 30-year-old, I got some new things in my hands, and I needed to sell them again, because otherwise I'm holding on to things that are going to get taken away from me. And I'm not preparing for that if I'm getting used to them in my hands, as opposed to selling them again for the joy of the treasure.
That's such a kinder way to not call them idols, but they're idols.
They're idols. I mean, and they're not always bad things. They're just, they ooze into how we see ourselves. But yes, I mean, at the end of the day, they become idols the moment they're not forfeited against for fresh treasure.
Right. I sat with some friends the other night. We were talking about Lent, and I said, I'm giving this thing up not because I care too much. I care about everything too much. That can't ever be my measurement. I can feel that I am unbalanced in how I care. And so that's what you're saying is like when we're holding things like that, whether it's our kids or our job or a desire we have or something we're eating or drinking or a hope, if we're holding it and unwilling to say, Lord, if you never gave me this or if you never changed this, you're still more important. That's when it's easy to identify the idol part of it.
Yeah, and the nature of seasons, because the Bible says, as long as the earth remains, it will be summer then winter, then summer, seed time then harvest. So if we think about the transition from winter to spring, it's set into motion the moment winter starts. Right. And that's the only time we get to prepare for the next season.
Yeah.
So the season I'm in now is my only opportunity for it to not hurt when those things get taken from me. But to the degree that they're precious and held on to, I become Smeagol. Like I'm Golem. I'm holding on to that ring.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's got to go in the volcano. And the moment it's come, you have to stab that thing through the heart. And and I'm not saying divest yourself of it or quit your job or any of that. It just has to go back in the ground to pull back for the treasure from the cross. And I think, we are preparing ourselves for when you would jet ski or get behind a boat and wakeboard.
Yeah.
And if you would hold too hard and you fall, it pops out of your hands.
Yeah.
It's what we're talking about is that light touch.
Okay. You mentioned in the book about addressing the bad habits that hold you back too in the season so that when you transition seasons. So I'm thinking about this. I'm like, okay, we're letting go of idols, of these things that we treasure, but we also have things that maybe aren't sin, but are just bad habits that are keeping us from transitioning well into a new season. Can you talk about that a little bit? How do we identify the difference between something that is an idol, that is sin? I mean, in the long run, Psalm 16 says trouble multiplies for people who pursue other gods. I mean, that is sinful. So how do we identify the difference between sin and a bad habit?
Yeah. Well, I think Paul said to let go, or whoever wrote Hebrews, sorry, didn't mean to just
could be a girl, could be a girl.
Could be Phoebe.
Who can know?
So Phoebe said in the book of Hebrews that I have to throw down the sins that entangle and the weights that slow me down.
Yes.
Right. So the
Two
weights,
different things.
if they're distinct from sin, they're not sin. They're just slowing you down. So what's the race? What's the finish line? What's the goal? What's the point? It cannot just be up and to the right forever, which was I realized for me a lot more than I wanted it to be. Just growth, grow the podcast, grow the book audience, grow all the social things. And that we can't just go, that's bad, because that's stewardship too.
That's right.
So if it's within, I think in this culture, we have this God of, so a helpful metaphor, and I'll circle back to that idea.
That's great.
It's, life is 3 containers.
Oh, I love this. Yeah, do this.
Container of build a container of filling the container, and then the container of it being all given away.
Yes.
So if that's the 3 seasons of life, build a container, fill a container, give the container and its contents away, then it's a mistake to try and indefinitely live in season 1.
Yeah.
Bigger. That's Alexander the Great, right? All the way to the end, it's just got to be bigger.
Right.
But it's also a mistake to try and rush to season 2 and stay there forever. Just full of good things and not building a bigger container when you can. I think that's kind of the God of fire, which is financial independence, retire early.
Oh,
and
wow.
maybe you have it within you to build the next Walmart or the next Apple to the glory of God, to provide jobs, to all those things. But you're like, nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to get enough for me and my family and then just camp out in a full cup that's small, but could be huge.
Yes.
So I think, and then it's also a huge mistake to pretend like season 3 isn't coming, give everything in the container away. So all that to say, we cannot just say ambition's bad.
Right.
God has put ambition within the human heart. We should run after the prize, but the prize can't just be more and bigger and faster. It has to be Jesus. And so the acid test of something being not sinful, but a weight to be tossed down, I think, is if it is slowing you down in your race after Jesus. And that could be something in any of those 3 containers.
Yeah. Is there an example that comes to your mind? I'm trying to think for myself that Is it just like wasting, for me, it might be wasting time on my phone. It's not sinful, but it's actually not, it is holding me back from what I would rather be doing, even if what I'd rather be doing or would be a better use of my time is cross-stitching and making something meaningful versus just scrolling. Is that kind of what you mean, the difference between a sin and a
I do think so. I think it's hard to, because what you just described for you could be sinful to someone else.
Good
I think
word.
it's so intensely personal. We have to listen to the Holy Spirit. And I think the peace is the umpire, right? Isn't that what Paul said? He said, let peace be the thing that calls fair from foul in your heart.
Wow.
Let the peace of God guide you. So if you sense the peace of God, being removed, like it, in the way that Spurgeon would say, don't go anywhere or do anything you couldn't continue to pray.
Yes.
So if something that we're doing is pulling us from the peace that would come from the presence of God, then it's a weight. So it could be for me, like weirdly, in my midlife crisis, I struggled with apathy that I had never struggled with. All of a sudden, I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to go take any speaking engagements. I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't have the vision. I didn't have the drive that I'd always had.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I had to listen to the Holy Spirit to say yes to speaking engagements that were going to be significant, not just successful.
Yeah.
And to be willing to muster myself to go out, even if it took faith. So yes, of course, it could be the phone, or it could be staying instead of going, or going instead of staying. And it's not a bad thing. It's just a thing that's maybe taking up more room in your life, like a sucker plant that now is taking nutrients away from the vine.
Yeah, that's it. The things that I've felt the Lord invite me to let go of for Lent are not bad things. And they're things that everybody else might have, and everybody else might have no ill attachment to them. But I have an ill attachment to them, and therefore it's not right for me to keep living in it. But it's painful, bro. I'm not having my favorite time of my life.
It's not the best.
Will you talk about a question that keeps coming to my mind? So it's a little left of center, but I'm going to trust what's going on in my brain. There are people who are changing seasons that are really happy about where they're going. They're going from engaged to married, or from not pregnant to having a kid, or from a job they didn't love to a job that they love. And in that transition, they're also feeling grief. Like, oh, I thought this is what I always wanted, but I'm sad. And I think about it when I move to a new house. I'm always like, why am I sad? I wanted to live here, but I usually cry the first couple of nights that I'm in a new house. Why is that? How come when we transition seasons into something we want, like spring, we can still have grief with it?
Yeah, I think we should not fight against those things
when
we feel them, because you're not properly poised to move into a new season until you've grieved the sadness of the outgoing one. And I think in particular, spring and fall are not just of the four seasons, they're summer in miniature, and fall is winter in miniature, right? Yeah. So they're like the double dose of transition. Yes. So I think we should have an outgoing, like, sorry, like I'm sad about that. Like, it's a mistake to not mourn what was that you enjoyed, and to fight against that or to feel bad for feeling bad. It just, I think, delays the healing process of any grief. To try and just move right along. I should be happy. This is a new job. This is exciting. This is what we were all moving towards. I'm sad about that. I'm genuinely sad. But always differentiate. Grief has to be differentiated. My counselor helped me to see when I feel grief for my dad, which is the grief that I'm currently processing. I feel sad, and it's like a big overwhelming pile of laundry. Yeah. And I'm like, oh God, who's going to do that laundry? It's so much. But if you sit down and start sorting it into piles, colors, whites, darks, all of a sudden it gets more manageable. So you have to do the same thing with grief. So what am I sad about right now? Well, for me, I am not sad about any memory I have with my dad. I'm not sad about any lesson my dad taught me. Okay, I'm pulling that out of the pile into a cherish it pile. I get to cherish it. I get to keep that. That's still mine. I'm not grieving that. Okay, what about my future with my dad in heaven when I get to see him again? Well, I'm not sad about that. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to pull that out of the pile into a look forward to it pile. Wow. Okay, so what am I sad about? Well, I'm sad that for the last 270 odd days, I didn't get to call him or text him. Okay, I'm going to mourn that. And now I'm actually mourning that properly, because I'm not accidentally mourning things that I shouldn't be. So in a season of life like spring, I'm not going to mourn summer because that's coming.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to feel bad about that. I'm going to like life in Boston or, doing this job or, you know what, empty nest, as it turns out, apparently you don't have to wear clothes anytime you don't want to because the kids are gone. Well, I'm not mourning that. Okay, what are you mourning? Well, I'm actually mourning. There were some things I liked about Denver. There were some things I liked about being so close to my mom. There were some things I loved about that. Okay, so now I'm going to just say I really am sad about that. And I'm mourning that that's now gone.
That's good.
But don't accidentally mourn your future or the parts of your past that are still with you and have shaped you. Just be specific, differentiate, and mourn what's been taken away.
And it's amazing what you're teaching. I've never thought of grief like this, and it sounds so helpful because it shrinks the pile. As you're grieving, because sometimes grief, particularly for me and my personality, can feel overwhelming, and I'd rather just not do the laundry. I'd rather just buy a new shirt.
Yeah.
And so, but you're saying, no, really look at it and pull out what you don't need to grieve. And then what is left is what actually needs your attention. And it's
so
just
now
a smaller
really
pile.
grieve it. Really grieve that small pile.
Yeah.
Every piece, grieve it, feel it, think about it, be sad about that. And I think we have such mixed emotions in new seasons because we haven't done the hard work of actually grieving the outgoing one.
Yeah.
But don't grieve the big pile, grieve the little pile.
Yes, make it smaller. And this is why I'd love for you to talk about this for a second, and then we'll talk about George Custer. But I think this is why we need counselors and mentors. Is I needed someone else to help me with my pile. How has counseling helped you as a leader, as a husband, as a dad?
Immensely. Jenny and I in marriage, me personally, leadership wise, you don't know to connect the dots until you get the way I say it is not a smug, but not an entirely unsmug smile from your counselor.
Right.
When you say something that they don't agree with. Like,
Yes.
okay, so back to my childhood traumas. I got addicted to pornography the same year my parents' marriage began unraveling. And I had never once connected those dots.
Wow.
They just, to me, were two completely disparate things. Yeah, I've got this pornography addiction because I'm very, I'm like a military tray. The peaches do not touch the ham,
Yes,
not touch the green beans.
Yes.
Jenny and I always have to talk about this because she says women are spaghetti and men are waffles.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I've got my own little grids and everything's compartmentalized. So I don't realize the ways in which that's not true on the inside of me, even though that's how I see life.
Yeah.
So I was sitting there telling my counselor, so he goes, so when did the pornography addiction begin? I go, well, it was right around the same time my mom stopped being emotionally accessible to me, but I don't think that has anything to
I'm
do.
sure.
And he looks up and he cocked his eyebrow.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, dang it. So I think the problem is we're all blind to our own blind spots, and you need someone else. Even just the raise of that eyebrow was worth the price of admission.
That's it.
You need someone to raise their eyebrow to you.
Yeah. This is going to be an opinion question, not necessarily there's a right or wrong. I'm curious. One of the questions I just talked about counseling on Instagram, and a couple of different people said, if you're doing individual, so not couples therapy, but individual therapy, does a female need to see a female counselor? Does a male need to see a male counselor? Do you have thoughts on that?
I think it would be hard for me to go to a female one-on-one. I don't know if I would ascribe that to someone else.
Yeah.
I think I would, but Annie, I have such a hard time. I have to actively, the entire counseling session, stop trying to please my counselor the whole time. I have to actually part of me, the pleaser, the performer.
The performer, me too.
Is he enjoying this? Does he think I'm doing good?
Does she like me?
And I've finished 10 counseling sessions and looked back and been like, you did it. You performed the whole time. Yeah. So one thing I tried to start with is not asking how they're doing or how their day's gone.
Yeah.
It's one thing that helps me. And maybe it's a jerk, maybe it's not a jerk, but I'll chat with the masseuse the whole time and get nothing out of the massage because I'm like chatting and I'm like, how's your day? Like, I just can't turn that off. So I have to actively look for ways to remind myself to do it. So all that to say, I think I would even more so have a difficulty because of, charming and polite, and the way I've kind of pre-programmed to think about dealing with a lady.
Yes. I've been the same. I've always seen female counselors as a female. So, but I think there are people who really benefit from seeing the opposite sex as a therapist. But in general, it seems like more of us choose to see someone, because I'm also looking for her to mentor me and to help me go the path that she has already led in her life. So,
but I will say, Jenny and I see a female marriage counselor, and I personally pull away so much from those conversations too. And in some ways, she can see me a little bit in the same way that talking to you, I see myself differently because I don't see life through the lens of my, male sexuality.
Yes, yeah.
That sounds fun.
Hey friends, just interrupting this conversation one more time to tell you about an incredible resource, the latest video Bible study from our friend Lisa Turkhurst. It's called I Want to Trust You, But I Don't. Just like we're talking about today, we may never fully understand the ups and downs of life on this side of eternity, but we can be certain that God's trustworthiness is a track record for us to cling to. And in this study, Lisa will equip you to understand what the Bible says about trusting God and others. And I Want to Trust You, But I Don't. You'll learn to identify 11 relational red flags and recognize when a relationship can be repaired and know the difference between a feeling and true discernment from the Holy Spirit. We all need that. Lisa was here on That Sounds Fun, back on episode 927, talking about her best-selling book, which this study is based on, and y'all loved that conversation. So I have no doubt you're going to love this study. The I Want to Trust You, But I Don't 6-session Bible study is perfect for groups or individuals. You can learn more and actually watch session 1 for free at harperchristianresources.com/trust. And now back to finish up our conversation with Levi.
That sounds fun.
We got to talk about George Custer before we finish here.
The boy general.
Wild story you wrote about him. I didn't realize, and I think this is kind of why I want to end talking about your book and Changing Seasons here. I don't think I've ever realized, which should prove you everything you need to know about me, how much humility matters in Changing Seasons. Because when we're transitioning with humility, it's going to be easier. And George Custer proved that a humble life is not his choice.
Arrogance and pride, and tragically, he was successful early on and got the rewards from it, and so tried to continue to go back to that bell to get more of those biscuits. Every time the bell rang, he wanted the Altoid, right? Like Dwight, or the Microsoft Windows chiming, like Jim programmed his computer. Sorry,
exactly right.
I think
That's
through
exactly
life
right.
in office illustrations. But I think sadly in life we end up getting some of those things, and then it's like, well, I'm just going to keep going back to this. So his bloodlust, his greed, anything that you can look to in life, it was because he was chasing the qualities he got from a young age, and I got rewarded. I'm going to keep trying, and there was no sense of humility, and everybody around him suffered for it, all because he was unwilling to age gracefully.
Yes.
He was unwilling to see there's not just a blessing in your current season or your past season, but in the coming season. And God has anointed. The Bible says his paths drip with abundance. He's crowned your new year with his goodness. So we don't have to be afraid of winter. We don't have to be afraid of spring. We can believe that from the beginning of the world, there's a plan for it. And he was dug in, trying to stay locked in right there. And I relate to him. Tragically, when I read Custer's story, I'm like, I feel like this could so easily, without the Holy Spirit, be my autobiography.
Same. That's why when you say in the book, I relate to this, I thought, this is not that's a bad guy story. This is hey, Annie, that could be your path too. I feel the same
way about Saul. Like when I think we all wish we were David all the time, but like when I read the Bible and read about Saul, I just see how easy it would be to become that.
Have you watched House of David yet?
Yes.
I mean, Saul, it's House of David. A math equation I would present to you is Saul in House of David equals Judas in The Chosen, where you go like, I feel so sorry for you so differently than when I read the stories.
And it's the same timeline in Custer. You see Saul and Custer, and you see, because he just had such a hard time with David's success, Saul did. And, when they sang Saul has slain his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. I wish I could hit timeout and jump into the Bible and grab Saul by the shoulders and say, Saul, David works for you. Everything
Right.
David has done is a win to you.
That's right.
Be a coach,
Yes.
but Saul wanted to be Luke Skywalker forever.
Yes.
I want to be the one in the arena. I want to be the hero of the story. And he was unwilling to become Obi-Wan Kenobi. And he certainly didn't want to be no Yoda.
Yes.
And I think all of us want to remain there. And so it makes us territorial. It makes us jealous. It makes us make bad decisions because we're afraid of of what spring's going to hold and what summer's got for us. And we just don't trust that God has gone ahead and created a beautiful deathbed for us. And so we're just like so rigid and we can't relax. And so if we can just have the humility to say, hey, look, Luke's great. Nothing wrong with Luke Skywalker. But man, Yoda is worth 10 times to the Force what Luke is. He can train all these other Jedi. So don't be holding on to your spot at the top. It's not your spot.
Yes.
Let go.
Yes, that's right. When we started the podcast network, I met with another podcaster last week who is going to start their own network. And I said, let me tell you the thing I learned the hard way is I could have been Saul. Because what happens is when you start a network, your listeners start listening to other shows. And they may go and listen to other shows and not come back. And so the thing I was saying to this other podcaster is like, please learn from my couple of months of pain when we launched the network of like, if your numbers don't grow, but all of their numbers grow, that is a win for the kingdom. And that's what you're trying to build. But but it was painful for me at the time too. But now I see like what multiplication because of the network of what God's able to do that doesn't actually reflect directly on Annie F. Downs. And that's me trying not to be Saul.
We've all introduced two friends, and then they went on to become better friends than you were with either of them.
Right.
And whatever that surface is something God needs to deal with.
Yes,
right? Because you only wince when there's some inflammation.
That's right. That's exactly right. Also, page 4 in the book, you say, this is it. Don't get scared now. Bro, with that Home Alone reference.
Yeah, can't stop. Won't stop.
Are there so many other ones in there I didn't catch? I saw you mention Home Alone one other time, but do you have some like Easter eggs in there that we need to be looking for from other shows?
Well, there's definitely some Princess Bride you're going to find.
Okay. I wouldn't know that well enough, but I believe
the fun
you.
thing in the Become Yoda chapter is every single A-head, which is a section, is something that directly came from the mouth of Yoda at some point in one of the movies. Yeah.
Brilliant. I knew when I saw that this is it. Don't get scared now. I was like, this man is, and you didn't reference it was Home Alone. You just said it. And I was like,
which is always my argument with my publishers, but I'm always like, there's no value in having to explain it.
That's exactly right.
If they get it, they get it.
That's exactly right. Can we talk about Fresh Life for a couple of minutes?
Sure.
I was going to have you do a special thing for Single Purpose League. And we do that probably every other episode. We do something for Single Purpose League, but I want everyone to hear this. The feedback I have gotten from speaking the first Sunday of the year at your church, I'm going to cry telling you this. The feedback I have gotten, one of the number one pieces of feedback has been about you. And about what it means that a pastor would spend their first Sunday of the year talking about singleness. And so I just want to thank you in front of God and everybody, because you didn't say a word, you did a thing that modeled something that I didn't even imagine happening when I was doing it. But that has been more than anything I talked about, what the feedback has been. Levi Lusko gave his first Sunday of the year to a conversation that most churches aren't having any Sunday of the year.
Oh, man. Well, it was powerful. We're still hearing feedback from it too. And I think that's a message you might hear at a singles conference or a young adults conference, but for the people that need to hear it are not just the ones who are already hearing those kind of talks and are looking for anybody giving them. Like, it was the rest of us to know how to build the kind of community that can be safe places for people to feel seen, heard, accepted. So we're at the time we're recording this in March, I think that remains the high watermark for me of the year for just church. There was such a joy. And I think our church felt like they walked away from that weekend going, oh, I know Kung Fu now. Like I feel like I have a different language set and understanding experience. So that was a wonderful Sunday.
Well, I loved it. I had a ball. And it's just not often when you get to travel and speak at other churches. The gift of having friends that can come and speak for you is you get to leave and you get to be on vacation or you get to be at something else. And so it's not often when I get to speak on behalf of my friends' churches that my friends are there too. So it just meant a ton to get to spend the weekend with you and Jenny and the kids. And
and the world got to have Annie F. Downs in a cold plunge, which was wonderful. Which was, how did you feel coming down the mountain from all that?
Oh, I if my toes survive that, I can survive anything. But when you tried to let me do 1 minute instead of 3 minutes, I was like, no, sir. We do 3 minutes in this family.
And you know what? You were in a 32-degree cold tank that your hands froze to because it was so cold. What was it? 20 below zero
it
or
was
something?
So cold. Okay, let's talk for one more second about The Chosen too, because you and I both love The Chosen. You're real involved with helping Dallas kind of pastor the audience. A lot of our friends listening are watching one episode a day. That's kind of our Lent
I love
rhythm.
it. I've got the reading
plan. It's
plan.
awesome. It's been awesome. So will you talk about going toward Easter into this new season? Why does looking at Jesus again matter? Like, why is that something? I mean, we've had so many more people sign up to do it than we ever imagined. Why is that, Levi?
Well, we're hungry for him. We're hungry for fresh treasure from the field. It's the again.
Wow.
The kingdom of him is like a man. So I think we go back to that treasure and we thought we've exhausted it because I found so much when I first found him. And the reason the seraphim keep crying out, holy, holy, holy to each other as they fly around the throne in Isaiah 6 is because they see something they didn't see before.
Wow.
I'm convinced they only intended to do one lap.
Oh, wow.
And they said, holy, holy, holy.
Wow.
Read Isaiah 6. They turn to each other and go, holy, holy. It's almost like now we have to fly again because we're going to see something different the next lap.
Wow. Okay, that's such a gift, Levi, because for any of us that have read the Gospels every month, like we were doing, or watching The Chosen, or have just heard these stories before, take another lap. There's something else you're meant to see.
It's that old proverb that says, you've never seen the same river twice because it's a different river and you're a different person.
That's it.
So if you think about when you open the Bible, you can't look at it like a John Grisham novel.
Sure.
Got it. Got the plot. Read The Fugitive.
Figured it
nailed
out.
it. It's a living book. But B, the version of you with these accumulated wounds and hurts and pains and pleasures and growth and integrated victories has never read that text. So you're going to see Jesus talking to Mary and Martha, and you're gonna pull something brand new. So I think the humility again of a new season of Jesus, a new season of you and Jesus is this is a different river, a whole different water system cycle has come through now. Yes. And so I'm going to look a full in his wondrous face again. Yeah.
Why do you say yes to Dallas when he asks you to do stuff for The Chosen?
I think Dallas is a man who's smitten with the beauty of Jesus.
Yeah.
And he wants that to come across on screen. I've told him before, he's given for a TikTok generation what Eugene Peterson gave us in The Message.
Wow.
A shocking,
beautiful,
controversial, low level, the cookies are on the bottom shelf and we get to see a different take on it.
I feel like he's one of the most humble people we get to be around. And he is so not perfect. Like he's so not polished. He's just doing what he's called to do. And it makes me go like, yes, Dallas and Amanda. Yes. Anything you say. Yes. I just love them.
They're the real deal. And the closer you get to him, the more respect there is.
Yeah.
And I think he's like a Francis Ford Coppola level genius.
Yes.
And yet, when you get closer to him, he's a great father. He's a great husband. He's a very fun hang. He's a sweet person.
Yeah.
He's not reading his own press clippings.
No, that's right. Not unless there's something to make fun of, in which case he'll share it so we all get to read it. Okay, Levi. So before we go, we have to end with this, like, pastor us as we switch seasons, pastor us as we're spiraling.
I just want people to know you can reframe spiraling. That's the big thing is we're all spiraling in some degree or another. And the moment you come out of one, you're fixing to go back into another revolution of the river and of the year. So next spring's coming, the spring after that's coming. But you can spiral up, not just down.
Yeah.
That's kind of
what is it? Will you describe spiraling up?
Yeah, well, if you spiral up, you can go up a set of stairs, not just down one. We tend to think spiraling is always a down thing.
Yeah.
But if our greatest moments of development, Ronald Rolheiser put it this way, in the second half of life, success still feels good. It just has less to teach us. So always true because of the Beatitudes,
Sure.
But especially in the second half of life, our greatest moments of breakthrough are not going to come through one more accomplishment.
Yes.
One more. I got invited to speak at the thing again. Like, did it fill your hole inside of you last time? No, but probably will this time. Okay.
Yeah.
So one more success, one more pleasure, one more great meal. It's going to be fine, but it's not going to develop you.
Yeah.
What's going to develop you is hitting a wall, pain, recalibration, disorientation, letting Jesus help you get your bearings and retool for what's next. And so if that's the case, every time I smack into I'm spiraling, I'm about to take a step up a spiral staircase of development that brings me at the end, not to something, but to someone. And that someone is Jesus. Yeah. I'll end, if you don't mind, with this story. My friend, I watched him waste away. And he died after a long fight with Parkinson's. And he called, asked me to come because he thought he was dying. He was going to die any moment. And so I came over, and he hadn't died. And he was so embarrassed. He was like, I thought I would die. I thought I was dying. False alarm. Wasted your time, Pastor. And I said, Stu, how many times have you died before? Yeah. And he said, never. And I was like, what makes you think you're going to be good at it?
Yeah.
You're not going to be good at it. When you finally do die, you're probably going to be so bad at it. Yeah. And I said, but you know who's really good at dying? Jesus. Yeah. And he successfully has done it. He's done it lots of times. He's been with lots of people. And when you die, he's got this. And he smiled and closed his eyes. And, within a few weeks, he was with Jesus. And I think all of our developments, we're not good at them because we've never been there before. And we berate ourselves for not being good at something we've never done. So just relax. You've never done this before, but Jesus has, and he's going to get you up that staircase.
Oh, that's it. Okay, Levi, thank you for being on That Sounds Fun. It is such a treat to have you here. I'm so grateful. The last question we always ask, because the show is called That Sounds Fun, Pastor Lusko, tell me what sounds fun to you today.
I'm, a friend of mine named NEF Downs got us into Tenzi. And so
are y'all enjoying it for real?
We are loving Tenzi. We love it. They do shimmer, as you know, on our concrete countertops.
Yes.
The Tenzi dice have a hard time sitting still, but no, we're loving the Tenzi. We get all the colorful dice out. I've never seen peach dice before.
Right.
And trying to get all those, it's something very strangely soothing about all I have to do is just focus on getting these to show up.
Yeah.
So
I'm so glad y'all love that game. That makes me very happy. I love you, buddy. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Annie. It means the world.
Okay, friends, do you get it now? Do you get why I was like, he has to be the one to help us transition seasons? He is just brilliant. I love his writing so much. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. And just his wisdom, one of my favorites. Make sure you grab your copy of Blessed Are the Spiraling wherever you love to buy books. It is out tomorrow. Congratulations, Levi. Make sure you're following him on social media. Tell him thanks for being on the show and happy book launch week. If you enjoyed this episode, go back and listen to episode 242, which was Levi's first time ever being on the show. That was a long time ago. If you have any questions from this episode, just drop them in the Q&A box on your Spotify app if you're a Spotify listener like me, or you can send them to us on Instagram at That Sounds Fun Podcast. We'll try to answer them there. If you need anything else from me, I'm embarrassingly easy to find. Annie F. Downs on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, yes, even TikTok. Anywhere you need me, that is how you can find me. I think that's it for me today, friends. Go out or stay home and do something that sounds fun to you, and I will do the same. Today, what sounds fun to me? Man, what does sound fun to me today? Oh, I get to go to the factory in Franklin. Next time you are in town, you've got to go down to the factory. They have redone all this stuff. It is really cool. So I have a meeting down there. I'm looking forward to it. Y'all have a great week. We will see you back here next Monday with Pastor John Tyson. Oh, listen, we are purely answering the question, How do we identify when spring is here? And we're going to talk about revival. Oh, you are not ready. Okay, we'll see y'all next Monday.
That sounds fun.
That sounds fun.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Check 1, 2 on the microphone. NEF down in your car to your home.
Every week it's something new. A deep talk or an interview. She'll make you laugh, she'll make you cry. When it's dark out, she's a light.